ladies, gentlemen, honorable guests, and my fellow Hoyas. My name is Saif Qazi. I'm the founder and president of the Georgetown Qatar Business Society. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the second issue of the Georgetown Enterprise. Thank you all for coming. Before we start out with the magazine and discuss its theme and the effort we put into making it a reality this year, I'm going to talk about the business society that made this possible. Georgetown Business Society was officially launched on the 2nd of April 2 years ago. And the main aim of the society was to represent a large body of students who actually go on to work in the corporate world. There's a common stereotype that Georgetown students excel in the field of diplomacy and foreign service. That is true, but that's just a half-truth. Our students also excel in anything that's entrepreneurial and corporate, and that is the main vision of GBS, to bolster that. Not only does GBS ensure that these students are given the adequate tools and skills so they can tackle challenges in the corporate world, but also we try to be the bridge between corporate Doha and Georgetown, Qatar. That is one of the reasons why we started a magazine last year. One of the tools and skills we provide them is calling speakers from different industries. They are big names who come and give their vital experience to our students to prepare them in the challenges they'll meet. We also take our students to different business competitions so they can show their worth on a level where they compete against other students, how good they are. Just last year, our students participated in a business simulation challenge called Global Management Challenge. It is played throughout the world, and just in China, they have 2,000 teams. Georgetown Qatar students took part in it, and out of all the universities that participated, we were ranked number 1 and 3rd overall in the country. So this is just a little bit about the Georgetown Business Society. Now I'd like to call up on stage the editor-in-chief, Joseph Hahn, and director of publication, Tekla Gagosheze, to discuss this year's issue of the Enterprise. Can I have you guys on stage?
When we started this magazine, we saw a lot of interest coming from students in business issues, and an expressed interest in serving in both private sector and public sector roles that face business issues on a regular basis. In fact, business and the economy is a large, important facet of understanding international affairs. As a result, we decided to begin launching this magazine to reconcile these interests. While our first issue was about economic diversification in this country, we've expanded and we've decided to use the theme of adaptive and transformative change in our second issue of the magazine. Adaptive change is a type of incremental, gradual change that happens in response to certain things like changes in consumer preferences or trends. Transformative change, on the other hand, is something that can alter the entire fabric of an industry and can be characterized by topics such as disruptive technologies. My editorial team and I, consisting of Emma Moensen, Hazem Ali, Afif Haitham, and Ritika Ramesh, have come up with this theme for the year, and we think that it's particularly applicable in this current economy. I would like to thank them for their hard work and their dedication to this magazine, and it's something that we could not have achieved without this. Additionally, this year we have a DC-based editor named Ho-Jun Lee, who was not able to attend this event. But definitely, we've been able to expand our scope, and we have even an article coming from a faculty member from the McDonough School of Business in Washington, D.C. Furthermore, we've expanded our article count from last year. We have a total of 17, coming from Georgetown students, faculty, staff, alumni, and those from other education city universities. Furthermore, we have experienced professionals, we have scholars, we have diplomats, and we also have entrepreneurs. Once again, I'd like to thank our editors and the larger enterprise team, and I hope each of you enjoy this magazine.
Okay, first of all, many thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. I will take the liberty to speak on everyone's behalf from the group to say how much we appreciate your interest and support of the work that we've been pursuing the whole semester, very ardently. Georgetown Qatar Enterprise, in my opinion, is a perfect example of what student collaboration can bring about. With a very defined vision, and that vision being the creation of an annual printed platform for the expression and exchange of the latest ideas in business. You probably know that we're not a business school, yet so many of us who graduate join and excel in the corporate sector. With the help of this magazine, we want to let our students be intellectually active in the business field, joining the network of people exceeding the university limits. As a director of publications, I would like to thank Rania Sohail for being a perfect assistant director, as well as Carlos, Awatif, and Hunain for forming such an effective yes, for forming such an effective and smooth team. And of course, special thanks to Awatif's jokes, without which we would not have been able to last. Yeah. And putting the magazine and the event together to collaboration with the various departments of Georgetown, to all of which we would like to thank for their support and faith of our student-run initiative for the second year to come. And we hope that faith will continue as we continue to justify it. Now that we have a beautiful issue ready, we will do our best for it to reach as many people as possible. And again, many thanks to all of you and all of the group.
Now we'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is El Harith Ali, a student here at Georgetown, and whose article our editorial team chose as a feature article.
Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Georgetown Business Society for allowing me to contribute to their magazine, and also I thank them for the honor of choosing my article for the sake of this presentation. The premise of my article was a discussion of a fresh experiment in the region, a business model that relies on recycling, engineering innovation, and using already available resources and cultivating intellectual and technical expertise. The name of this sector of the industry is called remanufacturing, which sounds too much like recycling. However, it has some economically challenging and groundbreaking aspects to it. To explain these things and to expand beyond the intuitive recycling aspect and the intuitive benefits of this business model, I'd like to discuss a concept named planned obsolescence, or in other words, built-in obsolescence. In the year of 1921, General Electric, an American light bulb and electronics firm, along with other producers, created the Phoebus cartel, which limited the light bulb life expectancy from indefinite, which can last hundreds of years, to 1,000 hours. This way, they allowed they challenged the problem that they faced by market saturation. All the houses had light bulbs, and therefore they could not produce or sell any more units. Moving on to the year of 1924, Alfred Salon, the founder and owner of General Motors, adopted this idea by creating the idea of dynamic obsolescence. He created new models every year, and he encouraged people to buy new cars, because he convinced them that the cars are not fashionable, they're not up to date with security and safety and fashion trends, and so on. On the other hand of the river, on the other side of the river, Ford, the owner and founder of the Ford company, rejected this idea. He found it to be cheating, to be dishonest, to be a failure at engineering. Moving on to the next decade, in 1935, General Motors becomes the leading car manufacturer, and Ford takes second place. The paradoxical problem here is that people who produce have to lower the quality of their productions to make sure they sell more of it, to make sure that they become obsolete. Now, remanufacturing is a scientific method of examining these built-in obsolescence aspects in auto parts for cars of all grades, from military grade to microbuses to small motorbikes. The first firm in the region to adopt this method is OWS in Sharjah, and the article discusses a case study of their success. Now, they do face some legal challenges, they do face some technical challenges. However, they can offer producers a marriage, a harmony between Ford's adherence to engineering honesty and integrity and Salon's practicality by producing high performance and high quality spare parts for cars without compromising the possibility of maintaining a business that is sustainable. And also they contribute greatly to their economies by being a self-sustained, by operating within a self-sustained economy where they get their resources from within the local markets, and of course they resell them within the local markets. I again renew my thanks to Georgetown Business Society for this opportunity, and I urge you all to take a look at the magazine and appreciate some of our inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harold. I'd just like to highlight one thing. Harold's article is just one of many in this year's issue, but what stands Harold out, he's a freshman. His article was selected by our team, which consists of articles that I choose from all years, including alumni pieces. So thank you, Harold. I now get to the most difficult part of my job as the president of the Georgetown Business Society. I have to invite the entire team on stage and commend the hard work they've done. But that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is that the team consists of 13 members, but 10 different nationalities. And pronouncing those names is a different challenge of its own. So if I butcher your name, please forgive me. We'll start off with the editor-in-chief, Joseph Hahn, and associate editor-in-chief, Emma Moensen. Can I have you guys on stage? With their team, Ritika Ramesh. Ritika couldn't be with us today. Afif Hedsham and Hazem Ali. Taking care of the publication side, led by the Director of Publications, Tekla Gago Shidze, Associate Director of Publications, Rania Suhail, and their team, Awatif Al-Habshi, Carlos Estrada Ruiz, and Hunain Ali. The two main teams were assisted by an advisory board led by myself as the chief advisor, Muhammad Temur Ali Ahmed as the advisor to the editorial team, and Kareem Abramalis as the advisor to the publications team. But the secret weapon to our successful team, and she ties the entire concept of Qatar Foundation. Our team did not just consist of people from Georgetown, but we had a designer who was a VCU alumni. Carissa was the backbone for this team. Can you please have you on stage? Carissa and Tarixa. As Joseph mentioned before, not only did we have a team here in Qatar, we had an editor serving us from main campus in DC. He's not here with us, of course, Ho Jung Lee. Just a shout, before we unveil the magazine, just a shout out to some people in the greater Georgetown community who would help us make this possible. I would like to thank Renee Gallants, Lisa Andrews, Waleed Khan, and the people at Student Affairs, Indy, Uday, Afshab, you guys are the best. Also, they always get unnoticed at events, the SAC Fund. They gave us money to pull this off, so thank you guys. This event would also have not been possible if the Sustainability Club had not co-sponsored this with us. Thank you, Thana. And finally, I would like to invite a man on stage who's been with us the journey from the start. We went to him with an idea, he encouraged it, and whatever you see here today has been guided by him. Can I have the Dean of Georgetown SFSQ Qatar, Gerd Neumann, on stage? Could you please, oh yeah. Dean Neumann, can you please unveil the magazine? I would now like to invite Dean Neumann to give his keynote address.
Well, I'm not sure about Keynote. I mean, the key notes have already been struck, as far as I'm concerned. But it's always worth saying something, even just to express my happiness to be here, my pride in what you've all achieved, and my pleasure in realizing once again what Georgetown students can actually do if let loose. And in fact, it also makes perfect sense that this business society exists here and that this magazine is produced here because, like yourselves, we also realize that the raison d'etre, actually, of the BSFS has always, right from the very beginning, nearly 100 years ago, been a part to deparochialize the business world at the time in the United States, to make sure that not just the politicians and the diplomats, but the business folk who were beginning to swarm around the world would actually understand what was going on, would learn how to maneuver, how to navigate the globe. So that marriage between the business world and SFS has been there right from the beginning. And of course, it's also represented in a part of our curriculum. It's evidenced in the fact that one of the authors in this very issue is the manager of Blue Rubicon's Qatar branch. So represents clearly a sector of international business. And also so happens that that's one of the places where some of our students can go and do internships with, both here and in London. Okay, so maybe a few words about change, since this is all about change, different kinds of change. This change, of course, that you might be thinking about when you look at these articles, how do companies adjust? How do they change? Perhaps you might even think, how do you yourself change? But change is also all around us. I mean, change is the one inevitability of being alive. And in fact, even of the inorganic parts of existence, it's inevitable. The question is then, how do we as humans, whether in business or otherwise, adjust to that? But it goes beyond simply a choosing to adjust or be transformative in how one reacts to changes around you. It also, I suggest, includes predicting change, thinking ahead, guessing, and occasionally gambling on what is going to happen and whether something that you introduce is going to work or might be an abysmal failure. And this is true in all walks of life, but of course clearly also in business. Now, one of the things worth noting, and this underlies one of the articles in the magazine by Alex Wegener, is that kind of thinking about change, whichever strategy you adopt, does not come in a vacuum. In fact, if it were done as if it were in a vacuum, it would almost be bound to be an abysmal failure. The best kind of strategies of change, even transformative or revolutionary change, even the kind of change that gambles, is one that is rooted in an awareness of what's most important to you, in an awareness of what your core values are. And then you can be adaptable in interpreting what those mean in changing circumstances. So, a few examples. Let's start with Georgetown. The fact that you're all here, that I'm here, actually results from some of the things I've just talked about. An awareness of what our core values are. My value happens to be I like the educational environment. I like contributing to this sort of experiment or exercise. I also happen to have a particular interest in the Middle East and the Gulf. That's less important in this story. The real reason we're here is because Georgetown University as a whole took a real gamble. They did something that they were not really cut out for. They had never put up a bricks and mortar operation anywhere else in the world. But this opportunity arose. And what were the core values of Georgetown University? It was well, we've always been strong in Washington. We've got this long history. We set up the School of Foreign Service before the Foreign Service itself was set up. But we want to be a global university. And we want to do what the Jesuits always said, which was, you've got to go and engage at the frontiers. So this seemed to be a revolutionary, virtual, transformative for Georgetown, change that was in line with the underlying values. And they jumped at it in the end. It wasn't a foregone conclusion. It was a lot of people needed to be persuaded, but they did. That could have gone wrong. Thankfully, it hasn't, I would say. So that's one example. We then get a later stage, 2000, say the last 5 years, last 5, 6 years, or a bit more. The original idea was, okay, we're going to deliver the undergraduate degree. Significant, but arguably more modest ambition than was possible. There was always a nucleus in there of being true Georgetown in every globally competitive sense. Top-notch faculty, top-notch research, really competing at the highest level. So that was the next decision. And again, this was a realization that, hey, this appears to be possible. Shouldn't we adjust? That's what we're really here for. Can we do this? Again, there was a risk. With expansion, with changing the culture, there's always a risk. But the risk was taken. That was more adaptive change. And the third came with the financially constrained environment we suddenly had to live with. We suddenly found ourselves having to seriously cut our budget, like everybody else in Qatar, like the government, like Qatar Foundation. So there's a case of the environment forcing change. Now, you could either throw your hands up and walk away, or you can just start, boringly cutting the same kind of amount from every bit of the operation. Instead, what we did was rethink. This is somewhere between adaptive and transformative. We had to completely restructure the whole operation in order to stay true to our values and deliver what we really knew we wanted to deliver and continue to grow in the long run. Let's step away from Georgetown for a minute. Qatar itself. Why was it even possible for Qatar to undertake the kind of magnificent, half-crazy experiment that Qatar Foundation Education City is? Because somebody took an earlier gamble. And it really was Hamad bin Khalifa, the father emir. It wasn't self-evident that Qatar was going to be LNG rich. I remember back in the days, you can see that's why I've got gray hair, when people knew there was gas in the ground. But I remember reading specialist literature on the energy world and the finance and banking world that said, well, they're thinking about developing this, but this is going to take tens or hundreds of billions, and they're going to have to borrow heavily. This is a big gamble. And there were lots of people against it, writing against it. There were people in Qatar against it. Because to develop the LNG sector, this is hugely energy intensive and takes a long-term vision. They pushed it through. They took the gamble. See where we've arrived at. That was truly transformative. Just maybe a little wider now, the GCC as a whole, the region within which we live and work and study. People have been talking in this region for a long time, like last year's issue about diversification, because there's some realization that the political economy of this region needs change. And it's become all the more acute with the financial pressures that we're now living through. There's a realization that it can't always be oil that supplies you with a revenue forever and for everybody. It can't always be the rent, effectively the rent type of revenue that you get from that underpins a healthy, sustainable economy and a working environment that everybody can be productively engaged in and significantly engaged in. But that requires a whole number of things. This sort of activity is part of it. Pushing entrepreneurialism, thinking about business, getting engaged, getting into internships, and so on. That's all really great, and in fact, it's necessary. So congratulations. But there's more that's needed. And we can all ask ourselves the question, and policymakers better ask themselves the question, is that more actually going to come? Is that going to happen? Because it's all very well if individuals like yourselves push ahead. And we're seeing lots of startups, and we're seeing lots of entrepreneurship initiatives. But there is a wider environment that's got to ultimately enable it. And I'm thinking of just about two things. One, I've just been involved in a study about a comparative study of all of the Gulf states in this respect. And one of the things that's sort of coming through is there is a bit of an arm lock on who gets into business. It's very hard for those sectors of society, whether local or non-national, to break through into established business and economic action at a very high level. So that's one thing that needs to be broken through. Change is necessary somehow. And it's going to be an essential factor in creating the sort of sustainable, diversified economies that this region is generally recognized as needing. So those of you who end up influencing decision makers and large business conglomerates in this country could also have an important role to play there. The second is a cultural thing. I'm not talking about Gulf culture or Islam. I'm talking about a culture that accepts that in order to get innovation and breakthrough and entrepreneurialism, you need a willingness to see failure. Failure in lots of startups is the norm. You try something, it fails. You try something else, it fails. You keep trying and failing until something rises up above and becomes a real success. And that's something that I can see bubbling away amongst many of you, and in little pockets here and there in the GCC, but as a whole, there is still far too little of that willingness. So again, as long as everybody starts pushing at this, perhaps one can get somewhere. One final point. What's a critical skill of being able that allows people to navigate all these changes, particularly trying to navigate their way towards a future that nobody knows? We have no idea what sorts of technologies are going to be around, what sorts of economic shifts, what sort of geopolitical shifts. Key thing, develop your brains. Education, but a kind of education that hopefully brings broad skills, adaptability, and an open, lucid, and nimble mind. I've always thought that's critical. We're trying to enable that here at Georgetown. We're always open to suggestions for how that can be done better. But it's also got to be an education that's connected. It doesn't just happen here, but that's connected to all that's around us, including, of course, business, without being bound by it. And there I'll end it, and just add again my congratulations to the team and everybody who's helped.
Thank you, Dean Nordeman. Also, I'd like to point out this is one of the last events Dean Nordeman will come and speak for us as the Dean of Georgetown, Qatar. So thank you so much for all your help. Before we conclude our event, I would just like to make one last announcement. Today marks my last day as the president of GBS, and this has truly been an enriching experience for me. I hope to have had an impact on our community, and I really hope this chain carries on and this society keeps on making Georgetown proud. After an executive level meeting, it has been decided that the new leadership is being passed on to the two gentlemen who helped me co-found this society. Can you guys please stand up? The new co-presidents of Georgetown Business Society, Temur Ali Ahmed and Kareem Malis. Can you guys have you on stage? Come on stage, guys. Thank you so much for coming. And I would like to end my tenure as president with words that are cherished by every undergraduate student. Dinner is served. Thank you.